So the New York Jets are winning the Super Bowl in 2025. 2024 season going to 2025. I mean, wow. I personally think that maybe it's way too early to tell. I think that might be massive hyperbole, but senior reporter, ESPN analyst Michael Clay makes a very good argument as to why this year the New York Jets are gonna win the Super Bowl. And yo, we're gonna talk about it.
I can do it all, I will never fall. It's the Renaissance, you know that I got the mother sauce, man. You know I'm the boss, I know what it costs. Have you what a loss? I'm so versatile, yeah, I'm a Renaissance, man. I can do it all, I will never fall. It's the Renaissance, you know that I got the mother sauce, man. You know I'm the boss, I know what it costs. Have you what a loss? I'm so versatile, yeah, I'm a Renaissance, man.
Congratulations, brother. Hey.
And here we go. So, as we know, the offseason has come and gone. We've had the NFL draft. The New York Jets have had a pretty aggressive offseason with some key acquisitions and free agency that are going to be a huge boost specifically to the offense. Made a huge splash acquisition in a guy like a Hassan Reddick, who's fourth currently in the NFL over the last 4 years in total sacks. Can also be a force in the running game, something that we were kind of missing or unsure about when it came to Bryce Huff. Unfortunately, we did lose Bryce Huff and we lost JFM, but the New York Jets did do a lot to go ahead and make sure they kind of shore up their defense. Some of us feel good about it, some of us have question marks, and some feel like we are lacking some depth. I think there's a little bit of in between in regards to all of that. But without question, the most improvement the Jets will have this offseason is on the offensive side of the football. I think we can confidently say we feel good about what this defense is. Top five defense, no matter how we look at it, it's a top five defense. It could potentially be higher this year with the defense being built to actually operate with their ears pinned back and getting after the quarterback. We got a couple of leads, and they're able to actually do that with a lot more, I want to say ease, but that doesn't seem like the right terminology. More of a natural aspect to the defense, right? We get leads, let those guys go after the quarterback, keep those leads, win games. But listen, I've been very excited about what we've seen this offseason. I've been talking about it in terms of what it can mean for the New York Jets, what expectations are. I got the Jets potentially winning the AFC East this year and going to the AFC Championship game. The Super Bowl, of course, is in play when you have a guy like Aaron Rodgers in the building. But, I mean, listen, Michael Clay took it to a whole other level. We're talking about a guy who's not really notoriously known for being a fan of the New York Jets, or at least friendly when it comes to talking about the New York Jets, who wrote what I felt was a very convincing piece as to why the New York Jets potentially this year have Super Bowl written all over them. And I mean, the article is going to be in the comments, but I'm going to go ahead and give y'all a little bit of what he stated. So, I mean, Mike Clay first starts off talking about the defense, right? An elite level defense that we just currently have. He kind of breaks down the key components coming back to this year from last year. I mean, we've got two All Pros pretty much in the linebacker room. We've got a pretty deep defensive line. We've got All Pro in the secondary. At every layer of the defense, there's playmakers, with the exception, of course, of the safety room, which can, of course, change really quickly if we decide to bring in a guy like Diggs or bring in a guy like freaking Simmons. I digress. But he pretty much, in essence, just kind of broke down how well this defense is expected to play and how they can only really get better from what they were at last year as they go into year three with this core group of players. And he's right. I think this defense is going to be the catalyst. This is a defense that still won the Jets 7 games last year in the AFC. Took 5 more games to 1 possession losses, unfortunately. And we're talking about games against playoff teams, games against freaking contenders that the New York Jets lost by a possession because, I mean, let's be honest, we had no quarterback. We had no offense. So in fact, we had the worst offense in the NFL last year. The fact that we won 7 games, 3 of them being against playoff teams, and the Kansas City Chiefs getting a gimme from the refs in order for them to go ahead and win that game on the Swifties night. Other than that, the defense has proven they can keep us in games with zero offensive push, no offensive aptitude. We've been able to stay in games. So 7 games last year in itself was a miracle for the Jets to have won. And we did the same thing again the year before that. This defense has kept us in games, beating teams. And last year, the New York Jets had what they called a massive gauntlet to start off the season. We probably faced off some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL. I think all of them. I think we faced off against the top quarterbacks in the NFL last year. Maybe not golf. Did we play? Did we play the Lions? No, I'm forgetting. Actually, I think we did play the Lions. I digress. But we played some of the best quarterbacks in the NFL, and this defense made them look average. Made them look average. It's not really hard to fathom that this defense can take it to a whole other level when they're actually being supported by offense. So the article breaks the defense down, and I couldn't agree more with what he said. It makes a lot of sense in regards to how this defense can be a component. He then goes and talks about Brees Hall, that literally second in scrimmage yards last year in the NFL, and this is coming off of an ACL tear the year before, with limited snap count for the first half of the year, specifically because our offensive coordinator wasn't too sure that that dude could ball. But nevertheless, he figured it out. And Brees Hall was able to go ahead and finish second in scrimmage yards. And mind you, he did this with no offensive line, no quarterback play. Just him and Garrett Wilson were the only threats on the field at any given time. He faced more stacked boxes than any other running back in the entire NFL and still finished second in scrimmage yards last year. That's elite. I'm sorry to say it. That's elite. I think that he's a top 3 running back, and he's not 3. I would put him at 2. I think Christian McCaffrey, without question, is the best running back in all of football. But Brees Hall is right there in the conversation and what he can potentially do with a competent guy behind center. So then he breaks down the acquisitions of how we've fortified the offensive line. You bring in an all-pro like freaking Tyron Smith. You bring in a Morgan Moses guy who's a top 10 right tackle in the NFL. John Simpson, an up-and-coming guy. He brings him in. He puts him there at the left guard position. Talks about how this offensive line has significantly gotten better. But then he brings up the addition of Mike Williams to support the wide receiver room. So now it's Garrett Wilson. You got Mike Williams. He believes Conklin is a very, very slept-on tight end. And I couldn't agree with this dude more. It's like he really took his time to analyze this team from their strengths to their weaknesses. And he's saying a lot of the stuff that a lot of Jets content creators have been saying for some time now. And it's just kind of refreshing to see an outside entity talk about it in the way that he has. But after he does all this, right, and he breaks down the improvements we've done in the offseason, he goes into the most important aspect of the New York Jets offseason. Aaron freaking Rodgers. Aaron Rodgers is back. We only got to see him for 4 snaps last year. But he broke down the importance and the value of bringing in an Aaron Rodgers, even breaking it down into tiers. If we were expecting the Aaron Rodgers of 20 and 21, where he was the NFL MVP, or are we talking about the Aaron Rodgers of 2022, where he took a bit of a steep dive in terms of like who he was, but made sure he pointed out that even with Aaron Rodgers' performance, he was still a top 10 numbers-wise quarterback. Broke down the QBR in regards to it being low. And then he talks about we could either get a version of that guy, a guy who's washed, completely done, or the guy that's closer to what Rodgers was in 2021 and 2020. In the end, he says, if we're even talking about something in between, right? Washed Rodgers, MVP Rodgers, you're talking about a top 10 to top 15 quarterback in the NFL. And he felt that this individual himself could potentially be enough for this team to be extremely competitive. But he went further, digesting Aaron Rodgers' career going way back to when it began. Talks about how Aaron Rodgers in times past did have a dip in QBR like we saw him have here in 2022. They talked about how after his 2016 and 17 campaign and 18 campaign, where he was in the MVP conversation, he was top 10 in the NFL in terms of quarterback rating and in terms of stat lines. He took a dip in 2019, I believe the article said. I don't have it in front of me, so again, I'm going to leave the article in the description for you to read. But he then talks about the article in that sense to where, listen, we saw him have this dip before where all of the doubters, all of the individuals started to wonder if this was it for Aaron Rodgers. Was he finished? Is he washed? This conversation went on and on in regards to what he was going to be. And then he came into that 2021 season, won the MVP. 2022 season, won the MVP. He's pretty much talking about sleeping on Rodgers being a big mistake. And I know people are going to look at the age aspect of Rodgers being 40 years old. We're talking about a guy that was 38 years old when he did this. And we're not talking about like 5, 6 years ago this happened. This was literally Aaron Rodgers' story 2.5 years ago, where he was the NFL MVP. We'll go with 3 years. He was the back-to-back NFL MVP. That's one massive cliff for somebody to kind of fall off of if you think he can go ahead and take that kind of a dive. Now, people are concerned about his ability to stay healthy. Listen, I don't know if you guys know this, but the Achilles injury is something that nobody can really explain. It doesn't tell you whether or not you're old or you're young. It happens to young players, old players, on grass, on turf. It's one of those injuries that happens, and it's more fluke than there's a science behind why it happens. There's a very good point that Aaron Rodgers comes back here after doing the new type of surgery that strengthens that particular Achilles. That he's the same player he was when he left Green Bay. We don't know. We don't know, and that's what's exciting about it. I don't believe Aaron Rodgers has to be MVP Rodgers for the Jets to win the Super Bowl this year. I think Aaron Rodgers in that top 10 category is more than enough to just have a top 5 defense and a top 5 freaking special teams. You bring in a top 10 offense with an Aaron Rodgers, and I think we're going to have a top 5 running game on top of that as well. We don't need Aaron Rodgers to be MVP Rodgers to be competitive or talk about being in the Super Bowl. But imagine if we do get MVP Rodgers, somebody who has dealt with this before, where the haters started to go ahead and come out in droves. They were talking that mess, that he was washed, that he was cooked. And he came back to go ahead and prove them wrong. Aaron Rodgers is that guy. A guy has been playing with a chip on his shoulder since he came into the league. He's been feeding off of the ability to prove individuals wrong and to go ahead and call them out on their BS. This isn't new to him. He's been awfully quiet about football, right? And a lot of people have been talking this mess about his political beliefs, his right to put what he wants into his body. They're talking all this mess. Aaron Rodgers has been really, really quiet. Listen, it's always darkest before the storm. And I feel like Aaron Rodgers right now, the silence speaks volumes. I can't wait for this season to start. But if you haven't read this article, I think you should take a good read about it. Because again, even if you're an objective fan, if you're not somebody who's just a hater, which a lot of people that are going to comment on this that aren't Jets fans that are talking negatively, 8 out of 10 times, they're haters. If you look at it just objectively, you realize there's something to this article. There's a very good chance that the New York Jets this year are that team. They're that dog. And Aaron Rodgers, who's pissed off, chip on his shoulder, trying to prove the world that he's still him, coupled with a top 5 defense, a top 5 special teams, a top 5 running game, that could be very dangerous for NFL teams. Aaron Rodgers is one of the most talented throwers of the football we've ever seen. I don't know if any people would argue that, and if you would argue it, fine. But he's literally one of the most talented throwers of the football we've ever seen. Conversation of past 40 years old, you've never seen other quarterbacks do it other than Tom Brady, who took care of his body, blah, blah, blah. Listen, Tom Brady never had the physical attributes or physical skill sets to be Tom Brady. Aaron Rodgers has always had the physical attributes and physical skill sets to be Aaron Rodgers. And then you couple that with the Tom Brady level football IQ. Now, is he as clutch as Tom Brady? I can't lie. I don't know if we'll ever find somebody to be as clutch as Tom Brady has been. The dude seemed to find ways to win games, whether it was cheating, using his mentality, using his limited arm, yet putting the accuracy was through the roof. He found ways to win games, okay? He's the greatest of all time. We got to admit it. It is what it is. He's had the greatest career of any football player ever. But the most talented football player ever is still freaking Aaron Rodgers. He's a New York Jet. Yes, he's 40 years old. I get it. I understand. But he's Aaron Rodgers. He's Aaron freaking Rodgers. That arm, man, still got a lot of life left in it. Yeah, I don't think he's going to be as mobile as he once was. I'll give you that. I mean, he is 40. But his arm strength is still unquestioned. No hits taken in the whole 2023 season, so that body's got a little bit of a recharge to it. He really has never suffered from any upper body injuries. It's usually been his calf muscles. Like, he's had calf issues in the past. First time he's had an Achilles injury, so, that sucks. But this is a guy whose upper body should still be solid. Not like Peyton Manning where his arm was falling off Tom Brady never really had the strongest arm. Again, high IQ guy. I think this article has a lot to it. If you haven't read it, I recommend it. It's a great read. New York Jets Super Bowl winners in 2025 season. Man, it's still too early in my opinion, but it's got a lot of steam. And if you read this article and you talk about how you see the rest of the AFC East potentially taking steps backwards, some AFC teams taking some steps backwards, a lot of new quarterbacks in the AFC, like it really, really has a lot of weight to it. Look, am I saying they're going to win the Super Bowl? I hope so. I hope they're going to win the Super Bowl. As a fan, I'm very hopeful. If you're telling me to bet money on it today, I believe I would bet on the Jets making the AFC Championship game if they can stay healthy. Once you get there, anything can happen. But man, what if, in HBO Hard Knocks, when old boy was talking about the Jets versus 49ers Super Bowl, he just overshot it by a year. And that projection specifically is for this coming season. I don't know if the football world is ready for Jets and Jets fans to have a Super Bowl. We can only hope. Go Jets.
And you see the future. Tell us, who do you see the Jets playing in this year's Super Bowl? Say it.
49ers.
49ers. And I'm putting you on the spot here. We're going to win. We know we're going to win. What's the final score going to be?
31-21.
Yeah? Because when all the pieces come together in a season, it can be absolute perfection, folks. Because that's what I'm thinking. I'm thinking the Jets and the 49ers. 31-21.